to go through the papers this morning, as ever. I'm delighted to be joined now by Nicholas Owen, former BBC broadcaster and journalist. Nick, lovely to see you.
Good morning to you.
Quite the weekend with everything going on with Lee Anderson. Let's get straight in. Well, let's talk first of all. We're calling it Politicians in Peril. It's the Sunday Telegraph front page. It's also reflected on the front of the Sunday Times. Bodyguards for MPs as extremism threat rises. I mean, this is a sorry state of affairs. We're hearing about 3 female MPs now needing security, even though they're backbenchers. Now, I think none of the papers are naming them for understandable reasons. I think one of them must be Suella Braverman, because she was in this seat a couple of weeks ago revealing to us that she had to retain her bodyguards despite standing down as Home Secretary because of the threat she's faced. But my goodness, aren't we in uncharted territory here?
Yes, we are. I mean, I'm surprised if it's only 3, frankly. Yes. Let's just remind ourselves, obviously, senior members of the Cabinet get security, I mean, full up, armed and everything else. Not all ministers do. There's some quite prominent ones do. I don't think, for example, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, despite the fact all the things he does with our money, he doesn't merit it. But as you say, what a sad situation we're coming down to it when individual MPs start having to... Well, when we say hire bodyguards, if that's the right expression, of course, it'll all be on the taxpayer.
Yes.
Fair enough. Maybe that's the world we live in now.
Yeah.
But if we start with 3 female MPs, remind ourselves that it was, one female and 1 male MP who were actually murdered while they were serving. Terrifying situation. And I can't believe that it won't just get worse, frankly. Once you start this, I think it'll be a situation where people will say every MP will need a lot more protection.
Look, I think this Gaza conflict has become so toxic now, the debate becoming so divisive. Obviously, we've seen those scenes outside Parliament with From the River to the Sea being projected onto Big Ben. We saw the surrounding of Tobias Ellwood's house. We saw the surrounding of Wes Streeting's and others' offices. We also had this incident, this sort of shenanigans in Parliament last week with Lindsay Hoyle. What's the coverage saying about the Speaker now, this morning, and his future?
Well, I mean, I remember hearing on Friday evening, I think it was, various political shows and question times and things. Lindsay Hoyle, he's toast, he'll be gone, but he'll have to go by the weekend. Well, he's still in a post at the moment, isn't he? But it's a bit hard to see him, how he can get out of this. It's a real conundrum here, isn't it? What sort of pressure was put on him by Sir Keir Starmer?
Yes.
Do you know, all I have heard from Starmer is, and all of us have heard, is one line saying, "Oh, no question of it," or whatever the phrase he used. I think an awful lot of people are not going to be at all happy with that. Well, what the devil happened in that little office behind the Speaker's chair?
We heard he went in shortly before this moment where Lindsay Hoyle obviously chose the Labour amendment, broke with protocol, broke with his own clerk's advice. We then also heard that the Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, was in the office too. Kate Ferguson in The Sun on Sunday here has got a line suggesting that Labour MPs boasted Sir Keir Starmer was going to, quotes, fix the Speaker.
Fix the Speaker, yeah. Well, of course, is this a case that, one way or another, what words we use, but it was made clear to Lindsay Hoyle, if he wants to go on being Speaker when the new government comes in, and everybody, particularly the bookmakers, think it's all going to be a Labour government with a huge majority as well. If he wants to continue to be Speaker, he'd better sort of toe the party line, remembering, of course, that he's still a Labour MP, though he not supposed to show any political views, whatever. I mean, that is a terribly difficult, dangerous thing for me, I must say. And I just wish there was a little more... I don't know how it's done, how it can be done. A little more pressure on Sir Keir Starmer. Come out, OK, you're expecting to be the Prime Minister. You've got to be straight on this. Yes. What did you say to him?
I mean, he has categorically denied claims that he threatened the Speaker with losing his job should he not choose this Labour amendment.
But what did he say?
What did he say? It's a good question, and I shall be trying to find the answer to it in the course of presenting the show over the coming weeks. Let's talk about the Lee Anderson story. Can Lee be reformed is how we're headlining it. I mean, the Sunday Mirror front page is not pulling any punches. Boot out this bigot, they say. We've got a Sunday Telegraph piece talking about how Nigel Farage has said that he would be quite happy to have Lee Anderson in the reform tent. I mean, what's your view on what he said and the subsequent fallout?
Words do matter, don't they? And how you phrase things is terribly important. But I think what Lee Anderson has touched on is something that rattles around in the back of a lot of people's minds, that we do seem to have now a situation particularly on the streets of London, our capital, every single weekend now, in particular, these huge mobs coming out with some slogans going around, and it just seems as though the mayor capitulated to them. That's a hard thing to say, isn't it? But there's not much sign of much pushback against some of this stuff.
Although, I mean, to single out the mayor, just to add some balance to this debate, I mean, you could single out the Met, and we know that the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, did. She said while she was in office that she felt that the Met were choosing sides, were playing favourites. Yeah. It's a difficult criticism to make, isn't it? Sadiq Khan is a Muslim. He has got a lot of close friends and allies in the Muslim community. But then he'll be arguing that he's London mayor for people of all religions, cultures and backgrounds. Yes. So is it the specificity of singling out Khan? Because actually Lee Anderson hasn't really strayed far from what Suella Braverman said in The Telegraph last week.
That's absolutely true.
And it is true to say that there are some seemingly extremist elements overtaking some of these marches.
Yes, I'm afraid it does seem that. I mean, I tell you something that gets me a bit. It's this business about this phrase, from the river to the sea. That's a very inflammatory thing, actually, and I think one has got to be very clear about that. What is actually at the moment between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea? It is the State of Israel. So if we are talking about overturning that, that's a very, very dangerous thing indeed, in my view, that phrase is splashed about everywhere. I think it is time, perhaps, for the police or the mayor or whatever to say, let us please stop at least that sort of inflammatory remark being thrown onto Big Ben as a slogan, And
people have talked about exclusion zones. I think John Mann, the former Labour MP for Bassett Law, he's done a lot on anti-Semitism, sort of in an independent capacity, both for government and indeed for the Labour Party. He's saying there should be a buffer zone around Parliament. People shouldn't be able to protest. I mean, the counter-argument to that would be, well, if you can't protest outside Parliament, where can you?
Yes, I think I agree with you. I think that's another slippery slope in another direction that I wouldn't want to see. But I think we've got to try to get some rules in place, if you like, and then we can turn around to people like Lee Anderson and say, no, look here, people are being very strict about this. You cannot go ahead accusing the mayor of being in hoc to Islamists in the way that he has suggested. The only way you're going to get round this, I think, is by showing a bit of strength in the other direction. You have got to address the concerns, the very, very clear and completely understandable concerns of people in the Jewish community who actually feel threatened. I've got very, very good Jewish friends who really do feel that this country now is a place where anti-Semitism is on the rise. This is, and that we've got to face that. That's a terrible thing.
Although Muslims will say, the statistics suggest that Islamophobia is also on the rise, and comments like Anderson's don't help that. Just a final thought on Anderson, Nick, is the Tories' loss Reform's gain?
Well, I'm not so sure about that. Interesting, isn't it? I mean, I think what our dear friend and your fellow presenter Nigel Farage likes, having people who make waves is terrific, isn't it? But I'm not sure whether Lee Anderson would be very good for Reform or for anybody else. I think Lee, actually, I tell you what, mate, shut up.
Fair play. Let's go to the final story that we've picked out. We've picked it out because of your former guise as a BBC broadcaster. Well, to be fair, this caught your attention.
It did, absolutely.
It's on the front page of the Sunday Telegraph.
Yes.
And I'll give you the headline and you can react to it from Tim Davie. BBC should be proud to be progressive, Director General told staff.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I mean, this is just... What I think about this is when somebody like Tim Davie says this at the very top of the BBC, this is going to go straight to the heart of those who write lots of letters to your newspaper, Camilla, grumpy colonels in their golf clubs. They're going to say, I told you.
Not all grumpy colonels. You get people of all shapes and sizes criticising the BBC for bias, to be fair.
Of course.
And the BBC, of course, denies that. But Davie's basically saying it's fine to be woke. I mean, is it at the BBC?
Well, he didn't quite say that. Actually, I think he said, this is not woke, but we're proud to be progressive.
Well, should they be progressive? Should they be taking any sort of stance?
I think again. Why sort of people like in these sort of prominent positions, and Director Generals is a very, very difficult job. And I think Tim Davie is a great fellow in many ways. But again, choose your words a bit more carefully, please. Why don't people think before they speak, or put it on Twitter or whatever they're doing?
I know, because they're probably rushed into putting it on Twitter. That's half the problem. Nick Owen, thank you very much indeed for joining me this morning.